That I think of the least contemporary philosophy that's opened a new understanding, an avenue for me of being educated really in the modern world, the scientific approach to everything, and that everything that you can know has to meet the five senses, to move more into the contemplative, the postmodern world where we don't have all the answers. And again, as you were talking earlier, of a scientific method that we can and need to know the absolute answers, or even the absolute answers of studying Scripture in a scientific way, that we're now open to the mystery again. And that we don't have to apologize for having religious experience. And therefore, the contemplative world to encourage and be involved in seeking an openness to the mystery and allowing prayer life to become alive again, instead of something that's almost scoffed by the intellectuals, but that it's an alternative now. I think it's a wonderful gift that the contemporary world has offered us.
In thinking about this question, about the general relationship between prayer and the contemplative tradition and the contemporary world, the metaphor that I have is trying to drive in a very large city, on the freeways of this very large city in which you have absolutely no knowledge of the highways, the freeways, and it's rush hour traffic, and you are constantly being bombarded with demands, with need to make a decision. You don't have a choice, you must make a decision, and these decisions and these demands are coming rapidly, so rapidly that you have almost no capacity to really take them in any kind of fruitful way. And in the midst of all this literally terror on the highway, we are asked to pray. We are asked to live contemplatively. And for me, that's the contemporary world, and the relationship of the contemplative tradition to the contemporary world. That the world is going to hell in a handbasket in many, many ways. And we nonetheless are needing to pursue, to cultivate this deep contemplative tradition. I think there are some of us who have a hunch of what this has to offer, but it seems like the world is deaf to what it is that is possible if you just stop driving so fast on the highway.
I think a very interesting point, John, that contemplative living can seem like another requirement or something that we have to add on to an extremely and excessively busy life with so many demands, and now on top of that I have to pray, and because I have to be everything, or I have to do everything. And that, as long as we're seeing it that way, we're never going to get it done. We'll never develop as the contemplative person. So I really appreciate your comment, because what a challenge it is to recover and preserve and the beauties of the contemplative tradition as almost as a necessary means of life on this earth now. It's not an extra added on, but it's absolutely fundamental and necessary. And it's so true.
I think the difficulty for me is trying to find the time, and it has to be a conscious, concentrated effort to make that time. And I agree with Patty about 9/11. I've been to the crash site in Pennsylvania several times, And it's in the boonies, it's in the middle of nowhere in the farmer's field, but yet these people stream by, they find it, they come, they pay their respects, and they pray. So I think it's the concentrated effort to make the time to do something like this.
I just like to refer back to John's analogy, and this may sound a little crazy, but I have a new thing in my life which doesn't really require, but I make the choice to go to a small town near Flint, Grand Blanc, about once a week. I absolutely hate I-75. And so finally I said, I've got to find another way. Once I get on it, it's okay. But it's the getting on, because there's cars coming from every direction. So I went to AAA. I said, I have to find another way from 69 to where I'm going. Well, sure enough, they forced the computer to tell me another way. And so it takes me a little longer to get where I'm going, but it's much more relaxing. So I take the 69, the highway that I'm comfortable with, avoid the one that I'm not comfortable with, and say, okay, I know it's going to take a little longer to get home or get there, but it's worth it because I can do it in a much more pleasant and, for me, safe way. So, I thought of that immediately when you were talking about the highways. And
I think another thing that sort of demands that we move to the contemplative prayer is the superficial society that we live in, and that there is so much life that is lived only skin deep, with the emphasis in the marketing, emphasis of just the movement of grabbing what we can get out of life instead of the meaning and depth. But when we live superficially, I think all of a sudden the demands of all those activities and pressures, that we get so wrapped up in it, we feel like there is just no time. And it's just like, Martin Luther said, well, if I wasn't praying 3 hours a day, there was never a way I could get everything accomplished. And just like, you were mentioning, this realization that if we do have the contemplative time, if we do do the prayer, then all of a sudden meaning is given to life, and in that meaning we can reorder our priorities so much better, and we can live that more vibrant life. But I've noticed in my own journey is when the routine changes or other pressures happen, and I no longer am doing the disciplines, choosing to do that, all of a sudden, I feel more harried. I feel less effective. I feel like I am not able to deal with all of the activities and the superficiality of just people bringing stuff up that makes no sense, but to be able to discern. And the contemplative life gives you the ability to have the discernment. But again, we can't do it out of a selfish intent, because then we get wrapped up and we don't do this to relieve stress, but we do it hopefully to put God at the center, and the byproduct is the blessing. And there's, I think, what we have to be careful when our own motivations and also how we encourage others, it is centering in on God. And that we need it because we need to be closer to God. The byproduct is a more vibrant life. But then the problem is, if you start emphasizing the vibrant life, we then lose it again. And anytime you think you got it, is when you don't.
Well, in my thought and prayer and activity, what I discovered was the work of Thomas Merton, and the idea that everything about the contemplative living is about your relationship with yourself, with God, with others, and with nature, all united through the themes of love and compassion and unity. And that, for me, knocked my socks off to a certain extent, because it forces me to refocus who I am and how I relate to the world in a very, very different way. And I think one of the things that our group struggled with for the past 9 or 10 months was, how do you live a contemplative life and not be a hermit, be off in the woods? How do you live a contemplative life in the contemporary world? And for me, the work of Merton is starting to open that door to find a path to do that. And I'm just in the beginning of my exploration, but I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about it, because it doesn't mean I have to run to the woods. Well, it's still nice to run to the woods, but and I don't live in the woods. I live in the city, so that's been very, very helpful for me.
Skip to the third question here. What gems do you cherish from any contemplative tradition that you think has or have a universal relevance for any time or place? Are there phrases or insights that you return to over and over again to draw strength and perspective?
One of my favorite stories of all time is the story of Jesus with the Samaritan woman at the well. And that sinks into my bones. Here's Jesus, a Jew, going through Samaria when most Jews crossed around because Samaritans were considered anathema. And he sits at the well, and the first thing he does is invites this woman of Samaria for a drink of water, invites her to serve him, and creates a relationship. And then in the midst of that relationship, he reveals to her that he knows who she is. He knows the struggles she's been through in her life. He knows the things that cause her to hide from society. And then she sees that he's a prophet, and so she engages with the differences between their two traditions. You know, you say we should worship on this mountain, we say we should worship on this other mountain. And Jesus cuts right through it. And he says, I could give you living water, and those who worship must worship in spirit and in truth. It's not about all the fluff around it. It's about the spirit and the truth. And when she sees that reality, she receives that living water. She feels cleansed and whole and forgiven, and she not only feels comfortable with who she is, but she is restored to the society that she had ostracized herself from, and that they had also ostracized her from. So the sense that what we share in common is a search for spirit and a search for truth, and that the power is in that to draw us together, no matter how different our traditions are, no matter how much struggles we've had in our past. That can be a path to life. To me, that seems to have universal appeal.